And thank you for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. President Trump begins his first international trip as head of state this weekend. It's a 5-stop marathon tour across the Middle East and Europe. Dale Hurd has the story.
The president will stop first in Saudi Arabia, where he'll meet with the leaders of more than 50 Muslim nations. He's expected to deliver an important speech on the need to directly confront and defeat radical Islam.
The speech is intended to unite the broader Muslim world against common enemies of all civilization and to demonstrate America's commitment to our Muslim partners.
CBN News' David Brody will be traveling with the president.
Stephen Miller, who has worked for Jeff Sessions, who's worked for Michelle Bachmann, very conservative, he's writing that Islam speech. So get ready for some potential fighting words.
And there's hope in Saudi Arabia for a reset in relations with the United States.
Saudi Arabia is delighted. They were very disappointed with President Obama, who they thought favored Iran rather than them.
The president then heads to Israel, where he'll meet with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu Monday and Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas Tuesday in Bethlehem. One thing the president is not expected to do on this trip: announce the moving of the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, something he pledged as a candidate. But he will visit the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and say a prayer at the Western Wall in Jerusalem. Then it's on to Rome and a meeting with Pope Francis. The two had sharp differences during the campaign season over Mr. Trump's proposed border wall. On Thursday, it's a NATO summit in Belgium and a visit to what was, during his election campaign, the evil empire, the European Union headquarters in Brussels, and a meeting with the heads of the EU and the European Council. Trump will also meet newly elected French President Emmanuel Macron. The president will then go to the G7 summit in Sicily before wrapping up his trip with a speech to American and Allied servicemen and their families. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
And as the president travels to the Middle East, a new poll shows a sharp drop in the number of Jewish Israelis who believe the president is pro-Israel. Before he took office, nearly 80% of those surveyed believe President Trump supports Israel. That number has dropped to 56% in the Smith poll taken for the Jerusalem Post. During the time between surveys, the president has welcomed Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas to the White House. He also has suggested Israel stop building in biblical Judea and Samaria. At least two big revelations came to light on Capitol Hill after the all-Senate briefing on the Russia investigation. Abigail Robertson brings us more now on this story.
A swarm of media greeted senators as they left their closed-door briefing with Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein over the ongoing Russia investigation.
I think the shock to the body is it's now considered a criminal investigation, and Congress's ability to conduct investigations of all things Russia has been severely limited, probably in an appropriate fashion.
In addition to the news, it's no longer a counterintelligence probe, which does not typically result in charges. Democratic senators claim Rosenstein knew the president planned to fire James Comey before he wrote the memo outlining reasons the FBI director should be dismissed. Senator Graham says he thinks members from both parties approve of the appointment of Robert Mueller as special counsel to investigate possible ties between the Trump campaign and Russian officials. But many do not understand that it pretty much knocks Congress out of the game.
One of the side benefits of this is that now Congress has been pretty much sidelined, not completely, but pretty much, and we can go back to dealing with legislative matters that affect the American people.
While the president says he respects the Mueller appointment, he thinks the entire thing is a witch hunt.
Believe me, there's no collusion.
While the White House drama dominates media attention, Republican lawmakers on the Hill insist they're moving ahead and making progress on many issues.
Whether it's tax policy, healthcare, everything else, we're still doing those things, though just most of the media attention is just focused on the White House and on Trump right now.
Senator Langford told CBN News he thinks the mainstream media prefers the chase over what's actually happening in Washington right now.
I'm not sure the media coverage is fair at this point because everyone obsesses about the latest rumor, and there seems to be running through a theme, and everything that feeds that theme, they run with it, whether it's an anonymous source Whether anyone else has background information on it or not, it's suddenly one person writes a story and everyone else covers the story that someone else wrote, and they're dominating the news cycle.
We're closing out what has been a rough week for the administration, but the White House aims to get back on track and change the headlines with what it hopes will be a successful first overseas trip for President Trump. Reporting from Capitol Hill, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
Abigail, thank you. Swedish prosecutors have dropped their sexual assault investigation against WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. Assange has taken refuge in the Ecuadorian embassy in London since 2012 to escape extradition to Sweden. He is now able to leave the embassy, but his legal advisors say he will not be heading out anytime soon. Assange still faces charges in London and would be arrested if he left the embassy. And if arrested, he could ultimately be extradited to the U.S. for possible espionage charges linked to WikiLeaks publishing activities. One woman is dead and 23 people hurt after a man plowed his car through a crowd in New York City's Times Square Thursday. Police have identified the driver as 26-year-old Richard Rojas from the Bronx. They say he attempted to flee after the crash, but was quickly taken into custody. Sources said he punched a police officer as they tried to take him into custody. Police say they believe he had smoked synthetic marijuana prior to the crash. The FBI says the incident is under investigation, and they add there is no indication that this was an act of terror. Still to come here on CBN NewsWatch, it's a bond that was forged by fire. Hear how the Six-Day War led to an alliance between America and Israel, and why some old enemies are threatening to this day. In the 50 years since Israel's Six-Day War, the world has seen the fall of the Iron Curtain and the rise of radical Islamic terrorism. But through it all, at least one alliance has thrived, that one between the United States and Israel. And as John Wagi shows us, this bond has been tested, but it's grown even stronger.
After the tension of the Obama years, Donald Trump's election opened a new chapter in U.S. relations with Israel. From the campaign through his inauguration, Trump sounded a clarion call to restore U.S. support for Israel, although he's made many supporters in the U.S. and Israel nervous with his recent backing of Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. The foundation of the U.S.-Israel alliance began in the Six-Day War. After Israel took back its biblical heartland, including Jerusalem in 1967, the whole world took notice. Israel's friends and millions of Americans rejoiced, but Israel's enemies began to call the U.S. the big Satan and Israel the little Satan.
When Israel won the Six-Day War, it was huge, because you went from anticipating disaster. It wasn't that long after the Holocaust, and perhaps another massacre of the Jewish people, to an incredible victory.
Ambassador Dory Gold is the former director of Israel's foreign ministry.
I remind you, in global terms, the U.S. had been bogged down in Vietnam, trying to contain the spread of Soviet power in the Far East. And here, all of a sudden, Israel stands firm and not only defeats its Arab neighbors, but defeats clients of the Soviet Union who were using Soviet weaponry. So it was a victory for Israel. It was the survival of the Jewish people, and it was an enormous victory for the West.
Middle East expert Joel Rosenberg says Israel's defeat of the Soviet proxies woke up the White House under President Lyndon Johnson.
Suddenly, this little scrappy Israel was seen as an outpost, a frontal forward position of Western democracy that had the capacity to defeat Soviet MiGs, Soviet tanks, Soviet tactics, Soviet-trained soldiers. So suddenly, the United States thought, maybe Israel's more important than we thought geopolitically. And it was quite galvanizing to what became the most important alliance in the history of the 20th century, the alliance between the United States and Israel.
President Johnson told the Russians no when they called for Israel to give up all of the territory recaptured in the war. Johnson made clear that Israel would have secure and recognized boundaries, a policy expanded by Presidents Reagan and Bush.
And that became the basis of American diplomacy for decades. And only recently some people talk about a full Israeli withdrawal. That would be contrary to Israel's national security today, and it certainly was contrary to Israel's national security back then.
In the half-century since the war, Israel has become a military power, as threats around it have also grown. Iran pursues nuclear ambitions while calling for Israel's destruction. Its terror arm in Lebanon, Hezbollah, has more than 100,000 missiles poised on Israel's north. And the old bear, Russia, is back in the region, looking for a foothold. Gold warns Iran's ties to nuclear North Korea and the Mexican drug cartels put the threat on the U.S. doorstep.
The entire Iranian ballistic missile program, to a large extent, is connected with North Korea's ballistic missile program. Both of us have an interest in making sure that the proliferation of ballistic missiles to rogue states be stopped.
As Europe becomes more Muslim, the whole idea of Western civilization is shifting. Rosenberg believes the changes could mean more fulfillment of Bible prophecy in the Middle East.
One of the worst-case scenarios for Israel is if Russia and/or Iran end up controlling what's left of Syria as it continues to implode. If it's Iran, you'll have an apocalyptic, genocidal Shia theocracy just over the border. If the Russians ask the Iranians to leave, you still have Russia, a nuclear-armed power, right on Israel's border. And according to Bible prophecy, particularly Ezekiel 38 and 39, we know Russia and Iran will form an alliance together against Israel and will come against Israel from the north in the end times. I'm not saying we're there yet, but the trend lines continue to be consistent with the preparation for those Gog and Magog prophecies.
John Waggy, CBN News, Jerusalem.
CBN has produced a documentary on the Six-Day War. It is called In Our Hands, The Battle for Jerusalem. The film heads to theaters this coming Tuesday, May 23rd, for a one-day event. To learn more and to find a theater near you, go to inourhands1967.com. Up next, the popular ABC sitcom Last Man Standing falls to the cancellation axe. Some media critics think it's because of the show's conservative themes, but one says the show could be making a comeback. We'll tell you why next. This week, television networks announced their fall lineup, and the popular TV show Last Man Standing was canceled by ABC. Fans are now wondering why. The show was ranked second and highest of ratings when it aired on Friday nights. Some media critics are asking if the cancellation had anything to do with the show's conservative theme. Joining me now to talk about this is Dr. Ted Baer from Movie Guide. So, Dr. Baer, do you think Last Man Standing was canceled because of the more conservative themes in the show?
That's one good reason why it may have been canceled. And we love the show. We've given it awards at the Movie Guide Awards. We've given Tim Allen awards. We've given some of his guest awards. It's a great show, and it had balance in it, actually, between Tim and his daughter and his wife and his daughter's boyfriend and all the people that worked with him. There was a lot of balance in the show. Of course, Tim was extraordinarily brave when he did an interview and sort of made the connection between National Socialism and the politically correct movement of our age. Now, I'm using the correct term, National Socialism, because I didn't want to get into his trouble. But the other side of the coin is that this teaches us something about television and what makes television work. And if you'd like to know about that, I'll tell you.
Should other shows or the creators of other shows like Last Man Standing be concerned about seeing it getting the axe?
Everybody should be concerned on television, and you've opened up a little window that I can slide through and give you some insights. Once upon a time, I was head of the organization that did The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe on CBS television. We had 37 million viewers. Imagine if you had 37 million viewers, it'd be great. And then we went to Kraft, and they said, oh, it's not our audience. Kraft now has a commercial where they're telling mothers to swear. Quite often, it's the advertiser that dictates it for different reasons. Advertisers want programs that cause people to buy their product. So if the advertiser is a drug company, quite often they want programs that have more sexual content, such as Game of Thrones, et cetera. but may do worse in the ratings. It doesn't do as well as Last Man Standing or Duck Dynasty or any of the others, but it's selling their product. So they think that that's a better pitch for them. So the advertisers, let's say with the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe that we did in 79, 78, before you were born, said this didn't fit what we wanted in terms of our demographics. And the advertisers will often push the network to move in a direction that just creates sex, violence, whatever it is that they want to sell.
Well, I'm sure you are following the upfronts and seeing what's ahead. Are you seeing anything bright that the networks are pushing next fall?
Well, the networks always have some bright tendencies. And in fact, what I'm thinking is that this is Last Man Standing is going to move over to Fox because it was owned by Fox. And as long as Rupert is around, and I used to meet with Rupert every year or so, I think he's going to try to brand his network in a way that distinguishes it from the rest of them. And I think he'll win if he continues to do that. He's suffering right now, so he needs to get some good branding. But there are some shows being considered, shows with friends of yours in mind for NBC, which seems to be looking at more faith-based product. And of course, NBC did very well with the Bible. And Universal, we've met with the head of television programming for Universal. They've got Dolly Parton's next episode of her Lifetime series. So there's some good shows coming up. Don't abandon all of them yet. Just go to movieguide.org to find out more.
Absolutely. Dr. Baer, thank you so much for your time. Always appreciate it.
Have a great day.
So, are you looking for something worth catching at the theater this weekend? Our friends from Plugged In Online have this look at the new film, Everything.
This is my whole world. My nurse, my mom, my sickness. I'm 18 and I've never been outside.
The movie Everything, Everything follows Maddie Whittier, a girl who is allergic to, well, everything. Because of a strange immunodeficiency, she's never been able to go outside and feel her bare toes wriggle in fresh-mown grass or have the wind blow through her hair. Her physician mom has made it very clear that exposure to nearly any kind of virus or bacteria could be deadly. For nearly 18 years, she's only existed within the walls of her spotless, decontaminated house. But when a teen guy named Ollie moves in next door, her safe and secure castle begins to feel something like a prison. Their bedroom windows face each other, and after catching each other's attention and communicating with smiles and nods and hand gestures, Ollie offers up his cell phone number, and their texting courtship begins.
When I talk to him, I feel like I'm outside.
Of course, for Maddie, it's a wonderful interaction that she's never experienced before, and it's something she has to have more of. Staying safely inside keeps her alive, but is that really living?
I'm willing to sacrifice everything just to live one perfect day.
Based on a popular young adult novel by Nicola Yoon, this teen romance raises some potentially thoughtful questions about the fragile balance between safety and freedom. Unfortunately, it also ends up promoting some rather reckless choices, romanticizing a teen lion, and then tumbling quickly into physical and emotional intimacy. So I can only give Everything, Everything just 2.5 text messages out of 5 for family friendliness. For the full review, visit us at pluggedin.com. Plugging you into the movies, I'm Jake Roberson for Focus on the Family's Plugged In Movie Review.
Time now for your Friday Faithful. I pray this is an uplifting message that will jumpstart your Friday and your weekend. No matter how small you may feel in the world, God created you with a life's purpose only you can fulfill. You are an original, and there is no one like you. With that word, make this a fabulous Friday. That is going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, you can always find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com. And of course, we love hearing from you. We'd love to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today or any day. You can do that by emailing us at newswatch@cbn.com. And of course, you can always reach out to us on social media. Check us out on Facebook, Twitter, as well as Instagram. We certainly hope you will join us right here again next week. Thank you so much for being here today. Have a fabulous Friday and a wonderful weekend. We'll see you right back here come Monday. Goodbye and God bless.